This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, we are live. We are recording. We have a cool audio message that comes in at the beginning. So my name is Jesse Hildebrand, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those who are joining us for the first time, we are all about sharing conservation, adventure, and science with classrooms around the world. Of course, there are no classrooms right now, so we really appreciate you tuning in today on our go-to meeting. This presentation will also end up on Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants' YouTube channel for you to check it out after the fact if you miss anything. This is also a joint presentation between Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants and Reach the World. So Reach the World is an amazing organization. They share long-form stories and highlight expeditions around the world and amazing scientists with kids from coast to coast across the US and internationally. So they do great work. We love partnering with them and highlighting this. And over the last 6 months or so, we've been highlighting something called the MOSAiC Expedition. And today we are joined live by scientist Sara Morris. She's going to tell us a little bit about her own journey on MOSAiC, how you supply such an epic Arctic expedition. She's joining us live today in Boulder, Colorado, and I hope you guys are as excited as I am to hear from her and all her cool adventures. Without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Sara, and take us away.
All right, thanks, Jesse. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, so thanks for having me. I was just going to talk a bit about MOSAiC. MOSAiC stands for the Multidisciplinary Drifting Observatory for the Study of Arctic Climate. And my team's been working on a piece of this project here at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in Boulder, Colorado. Let's see, let's go to, oh, my slide didn't change, hold on, there we go. So just a brief overview of MOSAiC. I know a lot of you have heard a lot about it, but for those of you that have not, the concept behind MOSAiC is to take an icebreaker and sail it as far north as we can into the Arctic Ocean until we find our ice floe or our ice sheet. And we're essentially gonna kill the engines and just drift with that ice sheet for an entire year. It's very exciting. Something like this has never been done before, at least for this time scale. So we're really excited to capture the full year of scientific data that we can. So this is just a brief overview. I'm sure a lot of you have seen similar schematics, but this is our experiment, or MOSAiC in a nutshell. So there's lots of different science teams with MOSAiC, and our goal is to capture everything above the ice, at the ice, and under the ice. And so we have lots of different science folks joining us. There's 600 plus participants from, I think, 20 nations. And so this is just kind of our ideal view of how we wanted to set up MOSAiC. So you can see the Polarstern, which is our icebreaker ship. It's a German ship. And they will find their ice floe, and then they'll lay out all of their science on top of that ice. And so, as I mentioned, so I am part of the team Atmos, or the atmosphere team. These are all of our participants located here in Boulder, Colorado. Most of them are out at the ice, or have been already, or are going to the ice. And so this is really exciting for our team from Boulder anyway. So what our team is measuring, so like I said, there's lots of different science teams, but what our atmosphere team is measuring are components of the surface energy budget. And so these are just different types of energy fluxes. So we have radiation, turbulent, which is essentially wind, ground heat flux, and just MET data. And so what we're trying to do is measure how much energy is coming in and out of the atmosphere. And if that energy is increasing or decreasing, we get warming or cooling temperatures. And this is just a way for us to understand how our climate is changing. So this is just a very brief overview. We do this generally using flux towers, as you've seen here. And we actually have, this is the one that we installed at MOSAiC. And so you can see we have this really tall tower, and we have instruments at different levels on this tower. And this is a great form of collecting data. But one of the challenges, logistical challenges we wanted to capture was we wanted to capture the same data set all over the ice. And it's difficult to do that with a tower because towers are not mobile. As you can see, there's lots of wires holding it in place, so it's not something we can easily move. And so our first challenge was to make the flux tower, before we even went out to MOSAiC, was to make this flux tower mobile, this concept. So we developed something here in Boulder called the Atmospheric Surface Flux Station, or ASFS for short. And it's essentially a flux tower kind of pared down and mobile, so it's on skis. As you can see here, this is one of 3 that we've deployed at MOSAiC all over the ice sheet. And I've got a picture of it before it left from MOSAiC. So this is in the Boulder parking lot at NOAA. So you can see it's on a trailer here, but there's some skis down here so you can push it across the ice and snow. The big trick logistically with building these guys was they needed to be self-sustainable. So we had to power them with methanol, and that converts energy to like a battery, essentially like a car battery almost, and then our instruments can pull energy from that. What's really fascinating about the development of these is they are essentially being run off of like a light bulb, is all of the wattage that we're using. So that's really great. We chose methanol because it actually exhausts water vapor, so we're not polluting our environment while we're out there. But this was a really great challenge for our team, and this was kind of the first development of something like this. So it was really exciting. One of the big challenges was how do we get this to MOSAiC, to the Arctic? And so we have these things called sea containers, and you can see a picture of one in the back here on the right or on the left. And so we were able to get all 3 sleds or ASFS systems into a container, and all of these black boxes you see here are all the instruments that we packaged up. And we had 3 of these sea containers. So all of those ASFS systems are all put into this red container you see here, and then the other 2 white ones are our labs. And so this is what our scientists will work out of to fix instruments, collect data, any issues that kind of come up where they need to work on an instrument or a station, they can do so in these labs that are in the white containers. So we put all of those onto semi trucks, and they trucked them all the way to New Jersey, and they went on a ship called a barge, and that's what they move, big pieces of equipment like this. And so they sailed all the way to Norway, and then they got onto I believe it was onto a train, and then they trained them all the way north to Tromsø, Norway. And this is where we are here in this photo. The polar stern is behind us, so it is docked and we are loading. And so this is part of our atmosphere team that we went to Norway to load all of our equipment to set sail. And this was in September of 2019, so this past September. So here's a picture of polar stern, which is really exciting. And you can see all of our sea containers, so those big containers on the front of the ship. There's also some on the back. And the way we get these onto the ship is there is this crane, this kind of red-orange crane here, and it's able to lift and things on and off of the ship. So here's a kind of an action shot of the crane lifting this blue container on board. All of our sea containers were actually loaded on this front spot here, and they just stack them. So I think there were 3 levels tall on top of this ship. In the background here, you see a red ship, and this is the ship that's going to follow the polar stern out to MOSAiC to help us drop off equipment and personnel. And so this is a Russian icebreaker. I think it's the Academic Fedorov, and it followed polar stern out there to help us unload, essentially. And this is a video, so I hope this really works. But this is I was there when the polar stern set sail. They set sail at night. And so this is everybody waving goodbye. So you can see all of the scientists on board waving to all the people.
Wow, awesome, Sarah.
Yeah, it's really cool. So that was a really exciting moment for a lot of people. You know, there are 6 legs of different exchanges of scientists that are going to go through MOSAiC. And so when each leg is essentially supposed to be between 2 and 3 months long. So these people are going to be out on the ice for a very long time. So there was a lot of emotion when everyone was waving goodbye. But here's a picture of the polar stern in the ice. And you can see how dark it is. So they're just coming out of their winter season. And so it was dark for 24 hours a day during this picture. And so that takes a toll on our scientists, and they've done an exceptional job working through those conditions. This was before everything, you know, the sun set for the season, but this was the polar stern offloading all of our equipment. So we found our ice floe, so the ice sheet that we're gonna kind of sail along with for this next year. And so you can see kind of, it looks like a river here. And this is called a lead. And this is when the ice kind of pulls apart. The ice is very dynamic out at MOSAiC, and so it pulls apart and it comes together. And so we have to be really careful when we're working on this ice, but I thought that was a great shot. Here's a photo one of our colleagues took of our team walking out to one of our stations of our instruments that we've put on the ice, and they're having to walk over one of those open water leads. And so we have lots of personnel dedicated to making sure everyone's safe on the ice. And so this was one of our teams going out, and they've got lots of safety personnel with them whose only job is to make sure everyone's being safe. So when we first arrived, the first thing we did was we had to build everything. So we do have a building called Met City that's out there, and inside of that building we have a lot of our instruments that will collect air samples, but we had to build the building. So we had so much stuff to ship on Polar Stern that it was actually better to not have it built in advance. And so there was a lot of work to be done before we could actually start collecting data. This is a picture of my colleague who's currently in the field right now, Dr. Chris Cox, and he's working on one of our ASFS systems in this picture. You can see just how cold it looks. So there's lots of ice all over our instrument. He has the hood of it up because he's running some diagnostic tests on the inside of it. But you can see how bundled he is. And so it's very, very cold. It's windy. We do have polar bears, and we've had several visit our instruments over the course of MOSAiC so far. And I think every leg of participants has seen polar bears. So that's been really exciting for everybody. So the main way that we power a lot of our instruments, not our ASFS systems, because those are run autonomously, so they're able to run without power from the ship using that methanol system I described earlier. But a lot of Met City or those other buildings that we've built are close enough to the ship that we can actually run cable back to the ship for power. So this is some of the crew doing that. But with that, I show this picture. We have lots of ice challenges. So the ice is so dynamic. Like I said, it comes together and makes this ridging, which is kind of what you see here, and then it pulls apart and it has open leads, which are kind of like rivers. But it eats our cable and it eats our instruments sometimes, and so we have people that are so dedicated, and they go out and chip away at the ice to get all of our stuff out if it gets eaten up like this. So we have lots of challenges there. One of the big challenges, so like I mentioned, the ice is very dynamic. So when we first set up MOSAiC, it was kind of set up this way. So here's Polar Stern here. And then over here to this left spot was kind of where Met City, where our building and our instruments and our flux tower were initially. And then after a storm, it shifted the ice so dramatically that actually now a lot of our equipment has moved to the front of the ship. And so we have to deal with this a lot. And when something like this happens, we have to, move our power cables and make sure people are safe, and they're not gonna, we want to make sure the ice is stable enough for people to walk out to those instruments to work on them. And so this was kind of a really big event that happened early on. And so we haven't had anything quite this dynamic yet, but this was kind of a really big shift that we were not anticipating. Well, we were anticipating, but you never really know when you're in the field. So I want to get to the logistics of rotating out our crew. So like I said, we were intentioned to have 6 different legs of people rotate through MOSAiC. With COVID-19, that we've lost one of those legs. And so we weren't able to do this last transition. So the people that are out there now have been out there since February. And so they're on their way home, hopefully in June. And so this was the first transition, this photo here. Our plan was, so you see Polar Sterns over here on the left, it's the shorter boat. Our plan is we have lots of other icebreakers from other countries willing to participate in MOSAiC. And so they bring out that rotation crew. And then for a few days, they swap crew and gas and food and all sorts of equipment. And then that transit icebreaker will take those folks back home. And so this was kind of our method for transport. This leg that did get canceled, it was our overwinter leg. And so we weren't actually going to be able to bring an icebreaker out to do that leg. And so that one was going to be transferred via airplanes. And so with COVID-19, that had to be canceled. And so, like I said, these folks have been out there for a while. This was the second transition, so leg 2 and 3 people. So this is when the leg 3 people who are currently out at MOSAiC right now This was when they were coming out to MOSAiC for the first time, and they're still out there. They'll be coming home hopefully in about a month. But this is our transit ship. So this is the Dranitsin, which is a Russian icebreaker here in the foreground here, and then Polar Stern's in the background. And so a lot of our scientists, the ice was so thick, they actually weren't able to get the ships quite next to each other. And so all of the participants had to walk between the ships, which was exciting for a lot of them, especially considering it was really, really cold. As you can see, the temperature up here was -72 Fahrenheit. So it was really, really chilly. There are 83 scientists and crew to be exchanged and 43 tons of cargo. So that was a lot to move. It took about a week for the exchange of people and gear. And then that ship came home. It takes about 5 weeks for that transit ship to sail back out of the ice to get people back to an airport, essentially, to get home. What was really exciting during this transition, or right before this transition, the Polar Stern actually reached the northernmost position of a vessel in Arctic history, which is really exciting. So no other ship has reached this far north during winter. So that was really exciting and a big moment for them. And then I've just got some fun photos of all of our participants. So this is the Leg 1 participants. They were out there September through about January by the time they actually got out and got home. Leg 2 participants, this is a really cool picture right in front of the Polar Stern. They left, so our people left Boulder in November and got back in April. And you also included in that transit time is about 5 weeks getting there and 5 weeks getting back out. And then this is the current leg that's out at Polar Stern right now. So these are Leg 3 folks, and they will hopefully come home in June. And actually in about another week or so, our next leg is coming out to meet them. And the way we're going to do this, because of COVID-19, it's kind of changed a little bit. But Polar Stern will actually pull out of the ice and leave that equipment on the ice to continue running. And it's going to pull out of the ice and go meet another ship at the ice edge. And then for about a week, they'll exchange personnel and gear, and then the Polar Stern will come back. And so that'll take a total of about 3 weeks. And so we're hoping our instruments all continue running in that time. Ice is very dynamic, so we'll see what we come back to. But this is a very exciting leg. So this next transition that'll happen in about a week is pretty exciting. And then I just want to wrap up and then just kind of show you guys if you just Google MOSAiC Expedition, there's great websites. The main website is the AVI German webpage. It's in English or any language that you need it to be in. And it's really exceptional. And I have it up if you guys want to see, but if you scrolled all the way to the bottom of that, you can follow MOSAiC on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and they post almost daily really fabulous photos with captions, and you can actually track the ship as well. So, but yeah, that's what I've got now. So.
Super cool. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for such an awesome presentation. We're starting to get questions already pouring in the chat bar, which is fantastic. So for anyone who has a question, just type them in the chat bar, and I'll take as many as I can over the next 20 minutes or so. A quick query on this transition from me though. So is the group that was going to be Leg 3 going to be Leg 4 now, or is it like a whole leg that those people don't get to go on the ship at all?
There's a whole leg that didn't get to go on the ship. So Leg 3 is currently out there. Leg 4 is the one that kind of got skipped. And so, you know, we've kind of juggled we've reevaluated within our team who wants to go back out during this pandemic. And so, you know, Leg 4 people, some of them were like, well, hey, I'll replace someone on Leg 5, you know, because so 5 and 6 are still happening. But Leg 4 kind of got skipped. And that was that one that we were going to do aircraft out. But it's too tricky with lots of borders closing and everything. So.
Yeah. And how do you land an aircraft on the ice out there? Like, how does that even work?
Yeah. So the plan was for this to happen in winter when the ice is the thickest, and so it can actually handle it. We have, when they drove Polar Stern out there, they have on board kind of like what you see when you go skiing, that kind of like grooms the trails essentially, and they'll groom a landing strip. And so they've already done that for emergencies. We haven't had any, but you know, that was one of their first things to do. But they were going to make a larger landing strip for the Twin Otters, and so I think it wasn't just one flight; it was going to be like 4 or 5 flights because the aircraft aren't that large, and so. Yeah, it was going to be a very exciting transition, but it got skipped.
Bummer, but again, great that the team is making it work in the best way possible, and hopefully the group that are on there for 6 months aren't entirely stir crazy by the time you go get them
And they do have access to something called WhatsApp, which is just kind of like a texting thing. And so they're able to text their loved ones back home, which is great. And so they're not totally removed from communication. It is very difficult. Like they don't have internet access at all, but they do have this other means to communicate with people that they need to. So
make the best of an odd situation.
Right.
All right, we're trying to get some questions typed in. So Jean wants to know, is there a possibility of finding artifacts while doing tests under the ice, like bones from ancient polar inhabitants, and has anything been found yet?
That's a great question. I'm sure, I know we're finding, we haven't found anything yet, but we are finding, seals out there where maybe we were like, wow, do they really go out this far? Or some unique fish types, or like there's different biology, marine animals that they're finding. I'm not a biologist, so I can't really speak to that. And I'm not part of the ocean team. But I have seen on their, the MOSAiC Twitter feed, if you follow it, and anyone can follow it. But you do see that they talk about some really exciting things that they're finding under the ice. So.
And this ice, I mean, you talked about being thicker in the winter, obviously, and that makes sense. How thick, so under the ice, are you close to the sea floor? Are you thousands of feet from the sea floor? Where is the ship located? I know it changes over time, but roughly.
It does. That's a great question, and I'm not sure I know the answer, but I want to say it's deep. It's not something that you're gonna, obviously scrape the bottom because we have a very large ship, but I know it depends on, the continental shelves. So yeah, I'm not sure, but I know it's rather deep, and it takes a lot of time to get our ROVs, our remote operating vehicles, down to the bottom. They are able to reach the bottom, but I know it takes a lot of effort. So I imagine that means it's deep.
This expedition is something where it's such an international community coming together in this epic, ship in the middle of the Arctic. I mean, the imagery, and you showed a picture by Matthew Shoup, who's done a presentation with us, is so amazing. And then you're taking advanced robotics and sending them under the ice to look for creatures and amazing things. It's a very cool program. I really do. The MOSAiC website's up on Sarah's screen right now. I encourage you guys to check it out. It's so cool. All right. Question from Annabelle, a question we always get for all our MOSAiC presentations, and that is, how do you keep warm when you're in the field? What kind of protection do you wear?
So so Avi, who's the lead of MOSAiC, so they're the ones, they have the ship and they're kind of initiating a lot of this. They have supplied all of our participants with gear, and we also have bought our own parkas to send up there as well. And each parka is close to $1,600, and they're so expensive. They're made in Canada because they only make so many a year, because not in high demand. And so, but we wear these really, really intense parkas. I think ours are rated maybe to -40. But the full, when you're on the ice, usually you wear more than just a parka. You wear a full body suit, and that's because if you do fall in, we want to keep you as warm as possible, and they're all like orange or red, so that it's easy to find people on the white snow. And so, but yeah, we have these really intense boots that are pretty chunky, and then everyone wears goggles because it kind of does take a toll on your eyes. I've been in the fields, not at MOSAiC, but I've been in the Arctic quite a few times on land and just on the coast, and the wind is pretty intense, and so I wear contacts, and I remember that being kind of a problem. Like, it makes your eyes water. And so you do wear your goggles even if it's dark out. And so, but yeah, you definitely bundle up. It can take almost 30 minutes to get ready to put all your gear on to get out the door. So.
In some of our other presentations, we've had people highlight a day in the life and like the room with all the clothes that you get into. Yep. It's like preparing for space or preparing for a deep sea expedition is what it's like to go out. And I think you showed -50 something Celsius, which is unfathomable.
Right. Yeah. It's a cold you don't know until you're in it. That's different. So.
All right. Before we take a few more questions, we've got some great questions pouring in. Just a quick one. You mentioned polar bears, that every group has seen them so far. Is there other Arctic wildlife they've run out into while they've been out there?
Yes. So we've seen foxes, which was pretty fabulous. I'm not sure we were really prepared to see foxes. We are out, I think, on the coastal sites. So actually, I brought up this image that's on the webpage, but you can see, this blue line is the ship track, but right in the middle is mostly, it's all ocean, right? And so we don't get quite as many animals as, say, the coastal Arctic sites do, but we do have polar bears for sure. We have seen foxes, and then lots of underwater things. So, lots of things under the water, but that's the only thing I've heard of so far. But if you're on the land Arctic sites, you do see things like caribou or, just little hares, like, rabbit type things and stuff. So.
Cool, thanks, Sarah. All right, simple question from Megan. How many legs will there be in total? And I'm gonna segue this into what happens when it's over, like when it finishes the final leg. When do they come back, or how does it work?
Right, so we did skip a leg, so this leg that's out there is essentially 2. So in total, it'll be 5 legs now instead of 6. And so when we're finished, which should be in October, we're hoping, of 2020, the ship will come back actually to Germany. So we left Tromsø, Norway, but since it's a German ship, it's actually going to go back in port in Germany, and we're going to bring all of our gear. So it's going to take a large effort just to kind of deconstruct everything and put it back on the ship, and take everybody home. And so that's going to be a few weeks of effort, I think. But yeah, then everyone will land in Germany, and then we have all of our sea containers shipped to Germany. And so we'll load those back up and then send them home. So we'll talk with German officials. It'll be different than the way they went out there, which will be a little bit more tricky and more logistics to handle. And so we'll see, but most likely they'll go back on a different ship or a barge, and then they'll be shipped back to the US and then trucked back to Boulder. So
fantastic. Thanks, Sarah. All right, Mr. Craig, he's a middle school science teacher, and he's joining us on GoTo right now. So he wants to know more about the data that you guys are collecting, what specifically it is, and for his middle school kids, is there a place that they can find this data that you guys have collected that's accessible to the public? Like, is it published on the website in a way that would be accessible to middle school kids or not, or what do you think?
Yeah, so different teams are doing different things. And so our atmosphere, and MOSAiC's they're doing their best effort to kind of coordinate all of this. Right now, our atmosphere team, since we work for NOAA in the US, and this is like NOAA funded, or not NOAA funded, sorry, US funded. So it's taxpayer dollars. So all of our data will be accessible for the atmosphere team, which is, and I assume other US teams as well. And so we collect all kinds of metadata. So wind data, temperature data, pressure. We do radiation, a lot of radiation fluxes. So that's, measuring how much solar radiation is coming in or going out. Ground heat fluxes, so the heat exchange between the atmosphere and the surface, which in our case is ice. And so we're capturing that. Just all kinds of stuff that you can think of. Lots of cloud radar stuff. So we're looking up and we want to capture everything we're seeing. But yes, all of that will be available. I don't know where on the OBVI page it will be available, but at the NOAA page, we are, in our atmosphere team, we are making it available. We're in the process now of actually kind of starting to ingest a lot of this data and process it so that it's in a readable format, because a lot of our data is collected in voltages. And so without our what we call calibration coefficients to kind of it essentially morphs your data into scientific units, that makes sense. So we collect a voltage and then we can convert it to like degrees Fahrenheit. And so we'll produce those outputs for people, and then they can absolutely go grab them. And so that will be made available. There's I've got the OBVI page up here, but there's also a CU Boulder MOSAiC page, and then a NOAA MOSAiC page, and it'll be accessible everywhere. So we're going to try to promote that as much as we can so it's easy for people to find.
Fantastic. Of course, this will be pouring in over the next few months and even years as well. And I want to stress for everyone at home that might not be familiar with NOAA, but it's a government agency that is really fantastic at taking complex stuff and making it accessible for people. So if you check out NOAA's websites, we've had that recommended by a huge variety of our speakers in the past as being a really great resource for people. So do check that out, and hopefully MOSAiC data is up for you soon.
Yeah.
All right, David wanted to ask, he read that after the polar stream comes back from this next crew change, that they're going to try and move it closer to the North Pole. So if they do that, does that involve dismantling all that like mini city equipment that you have out on the ice, and how does that work?
It does. And so, yeah, they're exploring. I mean, with MOSAiC's so dynamic, and so things change week to week. And so one of the things in discussion is if this ice is shifting out of the marginal ice zone, we might have to pull everything, put it back on the ship, and then sail back as close as we can to the North Pole and kind of put it back out there. We want to maybe avoid that a little bit. We do want to capture it. It's a lot of effort, but also we do want to capture everything as consistently as possible. And so if we do that, we'll lose a few weeks of of time. And so we would essentially have a gap. And so all of these things are being taken into consideration. But again, if you do follow this live MOSAiC feed that I've got up here, you'll see that they do talk about things like that. So we don't know for sure yet. We'll have a better idea once this transition happens and polar stern comes back to the ice floe. They'll reassess. So.
Fantastic. Great questions, guys. We'll probably have enough time for a couple more if people want to type in any, but what I want to ask right now is Annabelle's. She asked, how did you get involved with this? Like, how is this crew chosen? It's an international community of people. How did you specifically get involved and get interested in Arctic expeditions to begin with?
So I actually went to see Boulder, and there's a NOAA facility in Boulder conveniently. And so I graduated with an environmental science degree and really, really, really wanted to work at NOAA because I love the weather and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And so I kind of bounced around a few divisions till I found, the sweet spot. And for me, I really was so intrigued by the Arctic. And so in 2012, I went out to the field to the Arctic in Russia, actually for my first time. And it was phenomenal. It was it's so exciting. And I've just been kind of captured ever since. And so I went back and got my master's degree from CU as well. And so I've just been really in the Arctic consistently for several years. And our team at NOAA, is the Polar Observation and Processes team. And so we are primarily Arctic focused. And so that's how we first kind of got involved. Dr. Matthew Shoup is the father essentially of MOSAiC. And so he's been working on this for about 10 years to coordinate this effort. And that means talking to so many countries because this is a global effort. And so talking to a lot of countries, getting a lot of scientists organized. And so Matt's been working on this for, like I said, about 10 years. And so to see this kind of come to fruition is really exciting for him. And he's actually one of the people going back out right now. So it's been a lot of effort. It's taken a long time, but our team was involved because Matt initiated it a long time ago, but also we are kind of our Arctic team in the Boulder NOAA. So.
I swear, every time we have NOAA individuals on, you guys are the best. There's no need to push out why NOAA is so cool because your employees do it so well. I mean, epic Arctic expedition. You've had people flying into hurricanes. You've got a marine sanctuary later today. It's neat stuff. We're hired. All right, a few more quick questions. Maya wants to know, how much equipment do you need personally? So when you go out to the field, you get on the ship, what are you bringing with you directly?
So they've actually kind of capped how much people can take because you don't have that much room. So there are usually 2 to 4 people sharing a living space, and you essentially have like a high school locker is all that you have for your storage. And so so you don't bring a lot of books. Instead, you would bring like your Kindle or like something where you could put a lot of books onto it, or your computer. And so so you kind of prepare for what's going to keep you sane for being in the Arctic for 3 months. So, movies or books, music, things like that. But then you do bring like some personal items. So it's like when you go skiing. So you're going to bring lots of layers, and then you definitely want to bring, something to cover your face. So we have recommendations for all of our participants of what to use. What was interesting, a lot of our participants in what Avi required, the German company, and what we require also when we go into the field is a lot of training in advance. And so we had like polar bear training, so like what to do to keep yourself safe on the ice. And we have polar bear guards that are with us at all times because we're in their environment, so we don't want to disrupt them. And so but we went through lots and lots of training. And so about how to wear the gear, what's the proper gear to make sure no one gets frostbite or injured in any way. And so this has been a long time coming, and people have been training for about a year to get ready to go out in the field. So we well prepare them with what to bring. There's quite a list.
You have already covered one of my 2 questions that I always like to wrap up, and that is where to find more resources. So you've had this slide up, this beautiful map. There's great links that people can find very easily online. And so the other question I like to share is, again, this is a massive international team. You've got months of planning, years of preparation for individuals going on the expedition. Why is this work so important? Like, why is this being done in such a big way? Why do we care for the public? Why is MOSAiC important to us?
So the reason we care, at least in our atmosphere team, we do a lot of work with forecasting and improving forecasts and models. So And so climate models and weather models and sea ice models, things like that. The reason it's so hard to capture, so if you see this map here, a lot of our stations, we do work in the Arctic quite a bit and have for a long time, are on the coast, so they're on land. And so the reason MOSAiC is so exciting is because we have kind of this gap in our understanding of the Arctic, because we can't access easily anyway the Arctic Ocean and what's happening over the ocean, because what happens there impacts lower latitudes. It impacts us here in the US. It impacts our weather. Hear lots of things about polar vortex. We're all tied. It's a huge system. And so if we have a gap in our system that we don't understand, it's going to impact a lot of things. And so that's why we kind of care. And this is the first of its kind. We've never captured data in the winter. It's really hard to get up there in the winter. So we do have like buoys and things that we have tried to collect data as much as we can, but in the winter when you have a huge ice sheet, it's very difficult. And so we've essentially made a station using the ship and the ice sheet. And so we want to capture that full annual cycle to collect all the seasons of data. And so we care because we want to improve our forecasts and our understanding of climate and weather science. So.
Again, it's so neat to think, again, that it's such a multi-month effort, years in the planning, team from all over the world on this epic research facility. I mean, this is really important stuff, and we're so glad that you took the chance to share some of it with us today. Again, we've been highlighting MOSAiC. We've reached the world over the last few months, so a lot of these presentations are on our YouTube channel as well, as this one will be at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So we encourage you to check that out too and sort of get multiple takes on the same expedition and get a broader sense of it. Sara, this brings us to the end of the presentation. So I thank you so much for joining us today, and I really, really appreciate it. I know our audience does too.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was wonderful.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to attempt to find a way to stop the recording in GoToMeeting. This